What is up? It is Wednesday. Welcome on into Let's Bet It. Lauren Jabari here with Jared Smith. Jared, how are you? You are dancing today because we are getting closer to Thursday Night Football, which is going to be tomorrow in week 3 of college football now that we're starting to see some trends develop. How are you doing today? Happy Wednesday.
Doing good. Happy Wednesday, Pickswise Nation. Big show planned for you today. We'll dive into it in a minute. My mom's in town. I went to dinner with her last night at the Wynn. It was a
fun.
I know, it was so delicious. I had this amazing chicken parm, but then we got into a bit of a, interesting discussion this morning about chicken parm and your dislike of it. So please share why with our lovely audience why you dislike the most Italian dish on the planet.
There's something about chicken parm that just doesn't do it for me, and I'd rather have like a chicken piccata or a chicken marsala. I'm thinking of other kinds of chicken, but here's the thing.
Now I'm really
gluten
hungry.
really hurts my stomach, really badly. And so there's something about a chicken parm that just doesn't, I just don't like it. The taste is okay, but I don't feel great after eating it, so I don't. And then you're like, well, what if you just eat chicken parm without the parm? I'm like, well, then that's just chicken, right? So can you have chicken parm without the parm? No, it's just called a grilled chicken breast at that point.
It's grilled chicken with tomato sauce and cheese. But here's the thing, you're right, because the carb element of chicken, might as well just call it chicken carb, really does make it. It really does make it. And then you have to have pasta. Do you eat pasta? Yeah. You don't eat pasta at all either, do you?
No, I eat the chickpea pasta or zucchini noodles. It's so lame. I know. I didn't want to be one of those people, but I have to be. So
well, if you're allergic to gluten, I don't blame people who are lactose intolerant that drink soy milk. I get it. You don't want your stomach to explode.
I don't want to be like that girl. Yeah, I can't have. You have the gluten-free menu. Oh my gosh, I hate.
It's not basic if it is a legit allergy. It's the people that just eat it for trends. The trend is not your friend if you're eating gluten-free pasta just
That's true. That's true. I will say, though, there is something about a cauliflower crust pizza that just, the crunch hits different. So, no, the crunch, okay, everyone says that. Don't
replacing
knock it
carb
until you try it, my friend.
I have tried it. It's disgusting. I used to eat cauliflower rice, too. My ex used to make me eat that, and I hated it. And I said, no, I don't want cauliflower rice. I want regular rice. It's not the reason why the relationship failed, but we can get into that at a different time.
That's neither here nor there.
Neither here nor there.
Cauliflower rice aside, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this show. And that first starts off with some week 2 NFL.
You got it. You're good. There you go.
It's hard because we have week 3 college football, week 2 NFL, and then we have a special guest, Bruce Feldman, who doesn't need an introduction, coming on in a little bit to talk week 2 college football, the firing of Scott Frost, Nebraska, and their dynasty, who's now their play is dying and they're playing nasty. So we'll get into that
more
in a
like
little bit
nasty
as well.
than dynasty.
Yeah, I know. Seriously. The meat and potatoes of the show. Let's talk about midweek line movements for week 2. The Chargers taking on the Chiefs, which I am so excited for this game. Line opened up at Chiefs laying 3.5 points. It was at 4. Now this morning moved to Chiefs laying 4.5 points. Why is this move, Jared, significant? And will the Chargers be able to cover a spread like this?
Yeah, I think when you look at the injury report, Keenan Allen being the big one, but to me that wouldn't make a line move by more than, let's say, 0.5 point. And this line's kind of moved a full point. Now we're getting close to 1.5. So there's something else there with the Chargers that, the smart money just doesn't really like right now. I'm looking at their injury report. It could be someone caught word about J.C. Jackson's status. He didn't play on Sunday. Questionable tag this week, short week. Obviously doesn't have to recover from Sunday's game, so that's positive. Yeah. But that could be a reason why a smart, sharp bettor decided to pull the trigger on Kansas City. But let's be honest. If you're just looking at the metrics of this game, Kansas City looked pretty darn good on Sunday.
Yeah.
So maybe people are just starting to believe in the Chiefs. And it's hard not to believe based on what we saw. Everything about Kansas City points positive for me. And when I look at my notes from the game, here's what I wrote down for the Chiefs. Deeper, more talented than previous seasons. That's surprising, but that's truly what I believe, because you take Tyreek Hill off the roster and you add in a lot of depth at that wide receiver position. Juju Smith-Schuster has been fantastic. They have other guys that are contributing as well. Patrick Mahomes targeted 10 different receivers in that game on Sunday against the Cardinals. That is, good luck trying to you can't double cover Tyreek Hill. There is no Tyreek Hill on this team. You have to blanket coverage, and then that lets Patrick Mahomes pick apart and choose where he wants to go. The rookies have also contributed thus far in game one. Trent McDuffie wasn't even targeted in the game against Arizona. That's how good he was in the secondary. Wasn't even targeted. George Karlaftis had a 14% pressure rate. Very positive for a rookie playing his first game against a decent offensive line and a very mobile quarterback. So very positive things with the Chiefs. Andy Reid, I think, continues to evolve this offense. They had the highest rate of pre-snap motion of any team in the NFL on Sunday. And Patrick Mahomes is in his sixth year and continues to elevate his game. So that's probably why this line moved towards Kansas City. Nothing that glaring about the Chargers other than maybe a couple nicks and cuts. But Kansas City just is that good.
I feel like this was one of those spots where people were waiting in week one to see how the Chiefs and how Patrick Mahomes was going to be without Tyreek Hill. I think that was the biggest storyline heading into week one. They showed, hey, we kind of changed our scheme a little bit, not too much. Andy Reid was able to adjust around it. And like you said, Patrick Mahomes targeted 10 different receivers. So they were able to work around the fact that they didn't have a star like Tyreek Hill in their offense, who was, one of, if not the most targeted receiver last year for the Chiefs, and kind of Patrick Mahomes, like similar to Devontae Adams with Aaron Rodgers. Thank you very much. My mind is not working this morning, but it is interesting.
Wake up, LJ.
I know, seriously, it is interesting to see this line move a full point. I still am really high on the Chargers this season. I liked how Brandon Staley coached the team last week. I love Justin Herbert, obviously. We've talked about that before. This is going to be a really exciting game, and actually my most favorite game to watch heading into week 2 of the NFL season. A game that I'm not exceptionally excited to watch, but it is interesting how this line is moved, is the Patriots taking on the Steelers in Pittsburgh. So first of all, the game opened up at a pick'em. Now the Pats are laying 1.5 against the Steelers. TJ Watt not going to miss the season. That was the big news for Pittsburgh. Right now he's out 6 weeks. But with how the Patriots played last week, they looked like trash. And with how the Steelers played last week, they looked pretty solid. Why is the line moving in this direction where the Patriots are now laying 1.5?
So what's the emoji with the hand on the chin?
Yeah, very confusing at this point.
Yeah, that's how I feel about this line move. Now, you're right. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense looked good against the Bengals. They forced a ton of turnovers and sacked Joe Burrow a bunch of times. When I look at the Steelers' offensive numbers, if I dig deep, they were very poor. EPA per play was negative. Success rate was, less than 40, which again, success rate in the NFL especially on passing plays should be around 50%. They were not anywhere near that. So there are I can poke holes in the Steelers' offensive performance against the Bengals. I can also poke holes in the fact that the narrative around that game last week would have been very different if your boy, Money McPherson, didn't shank a field goal at the end of regulation to win the game.
29-yard field goal. 29 yards.
There are ways that we can very easily, with just a couple of bounces of the football or kicks of the football going in a different direction, there are ways to spin that narrative around and say Pittsburgh forced 5 turnovers and sacked Joe Burrow 7 times and still couldn't win. And that changes the narrative, how we feel about the Steelers. So I think that's why this line is moving towards New England. I think the Patriots defense played okay against Miami. They shut down a Dolphins running game that I thought was going to be good. Mac Jones's injury status probably also tilted this line a little bit. We thought he wasn't going to play. Now it looks like he is going to play, and I'm assuming that somebody really smart that bets the NFL professionally found out that he's going to play, and that is probably why this line ticked. And to be fair, going from a pick'em to 1 or 1.5 is not a massive move in terms of win probability. Let's be honest. You have to win by at least 1, and 1.5, not a ton of games land 2. So if this line moved to 3, Patriots -3, then I would be like, okay, somebody really smart knows something. But at 1.5, it could just be a couple of injury nuggets being dropped into the market about Mac Jones and maybe some adjustments that the Patriots are making, and that's why this line moved towards New England. Let's just leave it at this. I don't really want anything to do with this game because my heart says Pittsburgh based on what I saw, but my brain on the line move says Patriots. So probably a pass for me. Low total game. Points are going to be at premium. Weird one. Strange one in week 2. Probably best to stay away unless you have a very strong opinion on Mac Jones having a bounce back effort.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you here. Honestly, it's not a game that I'm like so looking forward to watching either. The Pats taking on the Steelers. It's not like, yes, it really gets the gears going. A game that initially got the gears going until there was a massive injury to obviously Dak Prescott. Bengals taking on the Cowboys this week. Cowboys initially opened up as a 2-point favorite in this one. Now the line is flipped completely. Shifted 10 points. Now the Bengals are laying 8 points at Dallas. It's obviously the biggest move of the week for 2 reasons. First of all, the line opened at what it was because it's the Cowboys, Dak Prescott, and the Bengals looked absolutely horrible. Now the injury to Dak Prescott, the Bengals being able to at least have somewhat of a good second half, maybe shifts this even a little bit more, but Dak Prescott not being in this lineup obviously makes this line what it is. What are your expectations, I guess, for the Cowboys the rest of the season? Because at this point, it's the Dallas Cowboys. Everyone's like, yeah, they're going to try to tank. They're tanking this season. They're not tanking this season. They have enough talent on the Dallas Cowboys team to still try to win this thing. But obviously the Bengals, the 8-point favorites here in this spot.
I don't really think that the Cowboys have a ton of talent on their roster, to be perfectly honest.
You don't think?
No.
I don't know.
I think they are an average talent team. And Dak Prescott, if he plays his best football, again, with a quarterback like Ryan Tannehill, who doesn't have a ton of talent around him at wide receiver, rising tide lifts all boats. Tannehill had a great game on Sunday against, average, slightly below average Giants defense. But they had a chance to win that game, including a kick late to win it, because Ryan Tannehill played well and kind of lifted the boat a little bit. That's how I feel about Dak Prescott. I think if Dak Prescott plays well, there is enough talent in Dallas to have a season that is resembling a playoff season and maybe win the NFC East. Now they're without Dak Prescott for 2 months. In steps Cooper Rush, and Lord knows what we're going to get. I mean, it's going to be a very interesting game, to say the least.
It could be a Geno Smith. It could be a Geno scenario where he just comes out and absolutely lights things on fire. I mean, doubtful, but at the same time, who knows? You don't know what to expect.
Exactly. There are unknown variables with Cooper Rush that make this game hard to handicap. But on the other side, while Cincinnati's offense didn't play that well against the good Steelers defense, the Bengals defense was pretty good against Pittsburgh. Again, they held the Steelers to a very negative EPA per play on offense, under 50% success rate on dropbacks. And I'm looking at the Bengals defensive numbers right now, and they were pretty solid against Pittsburgh. So if you want to talk about a bounce back game and you want to talk about a perfect teaser spot to take the Bengals from 8 down to 2 in a low total game against a backup quarterback and a bruised and battered Dallas team. By the way, they also lost one of their offensive linemen and a key player on defense as well. the Cowboys came out of that game on Sunday night in really bad shape, while the Bengals, again, all the turnovers, all the mistakes, all the penalties, almost won that game against Pittsburgh. So I expect some positive regression from Cincinnati, and obviously the unknown variable with Dallas makes it hard to handicap from a ATS perspective. But just to win the game, I feel very confident that Joe Burrow is going to stroll into Jerry's world and get a win on Sunday, and they're going to get back to 500. So that's kind of my vibe in this game. I think the line, 10 points from Dak to Cooper, that's probably a little bit too much. There's probably a hair of value on Dallas, and I'm assuming this line drifts back towards 7 as we get closer to the end of the week. But to me, the ideal play is teaser 8, 7.5 down to 2 or 1.5, and you just hope Joe Burrow and this Bengals offense bounces back and they're able to get a win on Sunday.
It's going to be interesting to see how a Dak Prescott-less Cowboys team is able to do in an NFC East this week, where they were the only team that lost last week. The Giants won, the Commanders won, the Cowboys lost. We were obviously expecting the Eagles to win against my Detroit Lions, but that's neither here nor there. We're going to get into more NFL heading into the weekend, but right now let's shift focus, take it to the college football field, bring in a man who doesn't need any introduction, Bruce Feldman, the National College Football Insider for The Athletic and sideline reporter for Fox College Football. Bruce, happy Wednesday. How are you? Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. It's good to talk some football with you.
Let's do it. First of all, the biggest news from this past weekend, obviously the firing of Scott Frost from Nebraska. I know you had a really awesome article on The Athletic of who could maybe fit into Nebraska in that team the most in terms of leading them to what it was, a dynasty of a team at Nebraska. And now their play is kind of dying and it's nasty. Who do you think could be the best fit for Nebraska to lead them to maybe get back on the right track after 20 years of not being on the right track?
Yeah, it's really interesting just in that when Scott Frost got that job, former Nebraska Cornhusker did an amazing job at UCF. Myself and a lot of other people thought it was a home run hire. It just did not work at all. I suspect because he didn't have a lot of head coaching experience, he only had 2 years at UCF. My gut is they probably will consider some coordinators, but I think they're going to look for somebody who has more of a proven track record. Everything I've heard is they want somebody who's going to be kind of a grinder. I could see Lance Leipold is a former Nebraska assistant back in the Frank Solich days, has a lot of ties around the area, did an amazing job at Buffalo in the MAC after winning 6 national titles in Division III, and has done a really good job in a short time at Kansas. I think he's somebody who they will look at. I expect them to give a lot of consideration to Iowa State's Matt Campbell for his track record of not only developing a lot of talent, but also creating a winning culture and changing kind of a dynamic that was so down in Ames. I think he would be high on their list. Keep an eye on Jamie Chadwell, who's done a really good job at Coastal Carolina. Really creative offense. I think you will see them kick the tires on a lot of people. It wouldn't shock me that if Matt Rule gets fired by the Panthers, that he's a guy who did an amazing job turning around Baylor when it was completely in the gutter and got Baylor really going and set the table for Dave Aranda to have that big top 5 season last year. I think he would be an attractive candidate. I just don't know if the timing were to work out, assuming that things don't get turned around with the Panthers. But, another guy to keep in mind, Bronco Mendenhall, who was the coach at BYU and then at UVA, he's out right now. He's somebody who, if they really felt like he was the right guy, they could hire him, earlier and get a jump on recruiting. And, I think when you fire somebody so soon, and remember, they fired Scott Frost now as opposed to even waiting till October 1st when his buyout would have dropped from 15 million to 7.5. That is a huge amount of money to just throw, I don't say throw away, but just basically hand out if they had waited a couple more to make this decision.
Yeah, that is a big chunk of change. All right, Bruce, let's live in a reality for a minute where you jump into Trev Alberts' brain and you become the AD at Nebraska and you have to pick one of these guys. In your eyes, who is the best fit, period, top to bottom, to have this job?
I think it'd be hard for me if Matt Campbell was interested in the job. I think it would be hard for for me to say no, because you're talking about a guy who's in his early 40s, has a lot of head coaching experience, though. Everybody who
Hmm.
meets really wowed by him and how he connects with people. I think the grinder fits, what word is that Trev Alberts is looking for. That fits. I think we were talking about a values guy. He fits in that. I like Lance Leipold a lot as well, but Lance Leipold is, he's late 50s. I don't know, I'm not saying he's past his time, but I think it's probably easier to sell to recruits a little bit more on getting a Matt Campbell if you can get him. Now keep in mind, USC was really interested in him, and he was coming out here to the West Coast right before Lincoln Riley jumped on the job. So this is a guy who's had a lot of opportunities. He would be the one I would think would be on top of my wish list if I was Trev Alberts.
Yeah, looking at Nebraska, they need some sort of change to be able to get them back to how they used to play in the 90s. So we'll see what happens with that coaching hire. Let's shift it now to LSU. I know you spent a lot of time there. Obviously, this is the first year with the Brian Kelly experience. Crazy week one loss to FSU, bounce back week this past weekend to Southern U. What is your opinion so far of Brian Kelly at the helm of that team?
Look, he's got a terrific track record. He's won everywhere he's been. He's really smart. He's very organized. I'm interested to see how it works out. Now, LSU is a much different dynamic than coaching at Notre Dame, and coaching at Notre Dame has a lot of
Hmm.
challenges. But you look at what you're going to play pretty much week in and week out in the SEC. That's nothing like what the schedule he had at Notre Dame. So let's see how the fit works out. I know the opening game was really rocky. There was a ton of mental mistakes from guys that have played a lot of football. And some of them, and so I'm interested to see what happens this week. They're playing a good Mississippi State team that probably should be ranked in the top 25. We know Mike Leach always has a good offense, and he has a really, really good quarterback in Will Rogers. A lot of weapons and some athletes on defense, and so I think this is obviously a big first SEC game for them. I did not expect them to stub their toe like they did against FSU, especially with that game being in Louisiana. It wasn't in Baton Rouge, but it's still in their home turf, and I'm interested to see because what's tricky for Brian Kelly is we've seen a lot of, I don't know if I would call it nonsense, but a lot of stuff, whether it's like how he pronounces the word family and all this other stuff, the awkward dancing recruit videos that kind of blew up in his face a little bit. And the thing is,
He's just out of touch with reality, Bruce. That's really what it is.
really goofy and really strange. And at the end of the day, it's like, Brian Kelly has won a lot of football games at a lot of different places. It was just weird that it was almost like it seemed like he was trying to fit in, trying too hard. And sometimes I think he tells jokes that maybe because it's Brian Kelly, I don't know if people realize if he's being serious or not. And so I just think the best thing that can happen is just go win some games, and he
Hmm.
needs, I don't want to say it's a must win here or anything like that. It's early and you got to give him some time. But remember, this is a place that just fired a head coach less than 2 years after he led them to a national title. The bar is incredibly high. So this will be a fascinating experiment.
Yeah, certainly. All right. So the futures market in college football is also fascinating. And I've been staring at Ohio State and Alabama at the top of this market for basically since the national championship concluded last year. But this week, now I see Georgia at the top of the list. And let's be honest, the metrics tell me that Georgia might be the best team in the country right now. Bruce, when you're navigating this landscape and you're grading the top teams in the land, has Georgia ascended to that rank, or is Alabama and Ohio State just kind of going through some early season struggles?
I think Ohio State and Alabama, like Alabama, I was at that game last week. It was a real dud of a performance. 15 penalties, and they probably had a bunch more that should have been called. Missed holding penalty on a key, run by Bryce Young, a bad face mask in the red zone that should have got called. Never mind the safety in the end zone that didn't, that got called, that didn't get called. It was a really uncharacteristic performance by Alabama, but they found a way to win on the road, and credit to them. I'm a little more. I still think Georgia's really good. I'm a little more hesitant to go too far over my skis on what happened week 1 with
Mm-hmm.
Oregon. I don't know how good Oregon is. They looked really out of sorts there. They didn't really look really prepared. They looked like they were almost just kind of very undisciplined, especially how things kind of got out of hand for them. I mean, that's a credit to Georgia to how they played, but I like Stetson Bennett. I think he's starting to get the credit he deserves. We know they still have a bunch of, Jalen Carter leads a really good defense, even though there's a bunch of new faces there. It's, he's still there with Nolan Smith and Keely Ringo. I don't feel like if you said right now, who do you think is going to win the national title? I'm not moving off Ohio State. I think they will keep growing and growing. I love what they have on offense. I think their defense will continue to gel. To me, they're the team I would pick. I feel better about having Georgia as a playoff team, but I'm not going to read that much into blowing Oregon out in week 1.
Yeah, another team that slid up there into that 4 spot, my alma mater, the University of Michigan, whose offense clicked with JJ McCarthy. So I want to talk about the Heisman race for a little bit. With a guy like JJ McCarthy being a sophomore, could he be a good maybe outside pick to possibly win the Heisman Trophy this year, or at least get to the ceremony?
It's an interesting idea because if you look at it, obviously there was a big gap between them and Georgia when they got in the playoff game. He can run. He runs better than Cade. He seems to have more tools and more just wow factor to him. Uh, they have what's interesting is they have a really deep receiving core. As you know, they now have Ronnie Bell back. They won the Big Ten without him last year, but he was their most reliable receiver. They got a bunch of speed, and they have a really good offensive line. The idea of JJ is interesting in this regard. Like every year, somebody comes way off the board to make a run at the Heisman. He's going to have opportunities. Like on our Big Noon pregame show, we have Michigan, I think 4 weeks in a row starting next week. People are going to see him. I mean, he did about as much as you could hope to do last week, against Hawaii. I think at one point the only incompletion was a dropped pass. He was really impressive. He keeps
Mm-hmm.
building off that. Who knows? I mean, there are going to be opportunities for him to get the attention. We know it's really hard to repeat, and only Archie Griffin has ever done it. I'm not saying I would run to the bank right now and put all my money on that, but I could, I could envision a scenario based off of, like if he's in the race and they go to Ohio State and he outplays CJ Stroud, who I think has a really good chance to win the Heisman. He's a good long shot. I mean, absolutely for a bunch of scenarios.
Yeah, Michigan's schedule is just cakewalk. I mean, Hawaii, UConn back to back is, whoever booked that deserves a raise. They're going to be favored in every game until that Ohio State game. So they could legit be 11-0 heading into Columbus. And man, I want to talk about a big noon game, Bruce. You better, buckle up for that one. All right, this week, listen.
I'm just curious, what is the price on him right now for the Heisman?
So full disclosure, and again, I don't know if you're a Heisman voter or not. I bet him at 200-1 2 weeks ago. He's now down to 20-1 at a couple of shops. I'm seeing maybe 30, 40-1 if you really do your shopping. He's the third favorite behind Young, Williams, and Stroud. That
Crazy.
gap has closed significantly. I wouldn't even call him a long shot anymore, Bruce. I would say he is squarely in the race based off of the metrics, based off of, again, Michigan's schedule. They're probably going to be 11-0, barring some kind of upset. There is a lot of upside, I think, with him. I mean, would you agree that, at this point, the gap is probably a lot closer?
Good for you for the 200-1. So I would
we'll see.
Definitely keep that one clean in my pocket. Make sure I don't
I put it in my safe. It's locked up. All right, week 3. There are some interesting games this week. I think, I'm a Penn State alum. Going down to Auburn's fascinating. I think, Georgia on the road at South Carolina. I don't expect South Carolina to pose too much of a press there. But again, it's a road SEC game. Is there a game that stands out to you? BYU Oregon might be fascinating. Is there a game that stands out to you? And is there a specific bet that you've already locked in? I know you've got your ATS column that'll come out on The Athletic at some point this week, right?
Yeah, I'm not very confident in Oregon right now. I just feel like it's going to take a little bit of time before they kind of put the pieces together there. When I looked at this, I'm not much on South Carolina right now. I feel like they just got kind of pushed around by Arkansas last week. I like Penn State to win at Auburn. It's tough to read too much into who they played last week, but man, I've heard so many good things about the running backs from the coaches I know there, and we obviously saw it last week from Nick, had a breakout game. I mean, Auburn has some dudes now on defense. I mean, they definitely have some guys who can play on that side of the ball. I'm less interested in them or less impressed by them. The game I think could be really interesting is Fresno State at USC, because Jake Haener has played a lot of football. He has total gunslinger mentality. We saw him go beat UCLA last year, where it was just a remarkable performance, where he's just standing in there and he is fearless, and he's got a lot of swagger to him. He has good skill guys. Jeff Tedford, I mean, this is way different. Jeff Tedford obviously had played against USC a lot, and we remember that game when Aaron Rodgers completed like 22 in a row.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is a different USC team, but it's not a good USC defense. As good as they are on offense, I'd pump the brakes on all the USC is back talk, because they're so suspect on defense. So I'm sitting there at, what is it, over under is 73.5. Woo! That's a big number. It is a big number. I would not be surprised at all to see them go over on that. I know it's a big number, but I could see a shootout with Fresno State and Jake and Caleb. I mean, to me, if Stanford doesn't turn it over a bunch in the red zone last week, that game is like a 63-55 game. So. And honestly, I mean, Tanner McKee's good, but I think Fresno State probably has even more speed than Stanford. I think they can give them some problems. I don't know if they can pull the upset. 12 points isn't that big given how good USC's offense has played. But I would say if you told me the over/under was 80, I'd say that's about right.
I love it, Bruce. Points. Let's get it. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. We so appreciate your time. Best of luck this weekend. Love reading your stuff. So we so appreciate you taking time to come on and chat with us today.
My pleasure, guys, and I'll keep an eye out on the JJ McCarthy idea.
JJ
go
to the
blue,
money
baby.
bank.
JJ
Let's
McCarthy
go.
all the way. Have a great
Thanks,
one, Bruce.
guys.
Thank you.
Too.
That was Bruce Feldman, National College Football Insider for The Athletic and sideline reporter for Fox College Football. So awesome having him on, listening to him talk about LSU, Nebraska, and some of his best bets heading into the future of this college football season. All right, before we end the show, Jared, we got to get into a little Major League Baseball action. Nerfies yesterday went 10-7. I know both of our best bets of the day are the same again. What the heck is going on? We're reading each other's minds at this point. But you do have one other Major League Baseball pick that I want you to talk about, Dylan Cease.
Yeah, let's talk about Dylan Cease. So for those that have been following our base, let's not cease to talk about Dylan Cease. All right. So for those that have been following our Major League Baseball picks, columns, write-ups, futures all season, we're sitting on a Justin Verlander ticket right now to win the Cy Young. Everything was looking hunky-dory until about 2 weeks ago when JV tried to cover first base and he popped his heel or foot or Achilles or something. I don't know what it was. But he's out probably for the remainder of the regular season. Maybe he comes back right before the postseason. But my point being, all of a sudden, Justin Verlander, who was like a $6 favorite to win the Cy Young, now it's kind of a pick'em, and even Dylan Cease is a slight favorite. So I am going to protect myself a little bit here instead of just letting the voters decide if Justin Verlander's season basically through August was enough to win the Cy Young. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't want the voters to decide, though. So I'm going to start to unwind that bet just a little bit by betting on Dylan Cease down the stretch. And the way we're going to do that tonight is to bet his under 1.5 earned runs prop. Now, listen, this prop also has a massive hit rate to the positive over the last, basically the entire season. But how about this? He has stayed under 1.5 earned runs in 21 out of 28 starts this year. That's a 75% hit rate, which is the equivalent of minus 300 odds Tonight, we're
I
only
love
laying minus 133. So while we're also hedging Dylan Cease to Justin Verlander, we're also making a pretty good bet, at least according to what the hit rates say. So I am betting under 1.5 earned runs on Dylan Cease tonight. Again, this bet is kind of a binary bet. It's half Dylan Cease, but it's also half of a hedge, a mini hedge on Justin Verlander. Dylan Cease could give up 1 earned run tonight, and Justin Verlander could still win the Cy Young. Those are 2 very possible scenarios. But I'm just protecting myself a little bit. It's not a huge bet, only 1 unit on Verlander, so we're going to put 1 unit on Dylan Cease, and we'll see how things go tonight. Under 1.5 earned runs against, I believe they're facing the Royals. Yes. No, they're facing the Rockies, who don't have a great offense, and this game is being played in Chicago, not Coors Field. So I feel pretty decent about this bet cashing.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. All right, before we get into our best bets of the day, Superbook Sports, Jared, our sponsor for Let's Bet It. Everybody make sure to check out superbook.com or download the app today and this season. We're all rooting for safeties. That's because Superbook is going to give you a $50 bonus on each safety scored this season. All you have to do is place a $100 pregame bet on any spread or total. And if there's a safety scored in any game on Sunday, you get a $50 bonus. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Superbook.com. Let's root for some safeties, baby. I love it. Absolutely love it. Before we get into our best bets of the day, let's take a look at Pickswise.com, 3-star play of the day. I know we've been having a lot of them lately. Who do we got for our 3-star play of the day?
Got a bunch today. Wise guy, again, echoing my Dylan Cease hedge, and he is going with the Rockies-White Sox run line bet. You can probably glean what it is based off of my handicap of Dylan Cease, but you can go to the website and read more about it. There's also some footy, a little soccer on the site today. Joe Casey's got, again, I don't know if you, for those Champions League fans out there, I have not had time to really digest or absorb what's happening on the pitch over the last few weeks because of what's going on in other sports here over at Pickswise. But Joe Casey is very locked into what's happening on the pitch. He's got a pick for Rangers Napoli. Also, Angelo Zara, MLS tonight, if you're interested. Colorado and San Jose, Rapids and Earthquakes. LJ, I think you've covered a Rapids game in your career, if I'm mistaken.
Yeah, a few Rapids games.
There you go. So they're facing the Earthquakes tonight. Yeah. Fun game there. And then Diane Knox-Ballas, our golf pal, who has been watching very closely the Fortnite Championship. I probably mispronounced. Fortnite's a video game, right? I probably mispronounced the name of this championship. Fortnite? I don't know. Go read about what she's writing.
Fortnite is 100% a video game.
It is. I don't know how to pronounce this championship name. I'm sure Diane does. I'm sure she understands it much better than me. She has a pick. It starts tomorrow. Obviously, Wednesday. Golf tournaments start Thursday. She has a 3-star play as well. And I'll leave the rest of the picks for this week because our buddy Clev TA is chiming in on Thursday Night Football, but that's tomorrow. Let's leave that in our back pocket, just like the JJ McCarthy
We'll
Heisman
leave the
ticket.
TNF
We're gonna tuck
for
that
tomorrow.
away. We're going to tuck that away till tomorrow.
Yeah. Let's get into our best bet of the day because I say our because we both have the same best bet. I got my odds at Superbook Sports, and it is a Nerfie. Do you want to share what the Nerfie is, Jared, since we are on the same exact bet again for the second night?
I'm a little scared, to be honest with you, because we did this yesterday and we crashed and burned.
I know.
So I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but you know what? We're just going to roll with it. This is an early game too. You have less than 2 hours to get this bet in. So I would be
the
very
bets
attentive.
in, people.
Get it in. Matinee Nerfie action in Cincinnati. I don't know if you're a fan of Skyline Chili, but hopefully the offense ate a little chili and they're a little sluggish today. Matinee game again between the Pirates and the Reds. Roansy Contreras, our buddy, we have bet a bunch of Nerfies with Roansy this season, and he hasn't let us down yet. Why? He is 15-0 to the Nerfie this year. He's made 15
That's
starts.
unbelievable. Perfect 100%.
Not allowed to run in the first inning all season. His data obviously solid. Batting average under 200, whip under 1. All that's hunky-dory. Nick Lodolo, 11-4 to the Nerfie this year. 7-2 at home. That's a very positive mark. 34% K rate in the first inning. A walk rate under 10. All of the metrics, all of the data checks our pitching boxes. Now let's go to the lineups and not a whole lot.
Should I do the lineups since you already did the pitching? Should I do the lineups,
you do the lineups
now that you
my
did the
friend.
pitching?
You do the lineups.
Okay.
You do the lineups.
Well,
Talk
first
to
of
me
all,
about lineups.
The Pirates just suck first of all, offensively. They're just not a very good team. That's my cap. The Pirates suck. Hard-hitting analysis here. But honestly, they have not scored a run in about 75% of their first innings, which means they're only scoring in the first inning at around a 25% rate, if my math is correct. And then you look at the other side, and the Reds have not been very good either. They've also been about 75%. Oh, actually, I have my notes wrong. 81% of the time, the Pirates are not scoring in the first inning, which is crazy. 75% of the time, the Reds are not scoring in the first inning, and both of them have been held scoreless in 8 of their last 10 games. So when it comes to the offense, not feeling too good about them scoring in the first inning. And when you put the pitchers into it, especially with a guy like Roenzi, I love his name, Roenzi. When he's gone a perfect 15 for 15 in the first inning, lock it in. And it's only minus 142. Got that on Superbook Sports. So make sure to check it out. Our Nerfy, Jared. We're pairing up again tonight, making sure it happens. Let's get it going, baby. Let's get it going.
I think there's a better price available. Shop around. I do think there are some better prices available in the market. So I would shop that number. But I feel very confident that we are going to hit this bet tonight. Or this afternoon.
That's it for us today, guys. Or this afternoon, yeah. You only have to wait a couple hours for it to happen. Find us on the Pickswise YouTube channel. Go to Pickswise.com. Follow us on Twitter. Jared Smith, Lauren Jabara. We'll see you guys tomorrow for Thursday Night Football. Until then, have a great night. Let's get it. Let's bet it.